Hey everybody, what is up? Tominator here, and let's get right into this because I know this is the one a lot of you have been anxiously waiting for. We're talking about the 2018 Mr. Olympia finals comparisons. So this was the top four callout consisting of William Bonac, Shawn Rhoden, Heath, and Roelly Winklaar. And let me just mention right off the bat that they improved the lighting dramatically from Friday to Saturday because here in the finals it was much brighter and more dynamic, so we were catching all sorts of details and depth to their physiques that wasn't coming through during the prejudging. And these pictures from Team Andhra are some top quality stuff. It's really going to make my life easier and yours as well to properly analyze this whole thing, so a big shout out goes to them. Link will be in the description. And yeah, man, they must have called this group out like 5 times or something throughout the evening. They just kept making them go through the rounds again and again, and I think that this really hurt Phil more than anyone because towards the end there, especially, he was looking winded and clearly having a difficult time keeping it all together. He was struggling to hold poses, and the midsection was often out of control. And that's something that these still photos, as good as they are, simply fail to capture. The transition periods as they move between poses was where Phil was at his worst. Because when he was actually set and locked in and flexing, it has to be said that even his bloated belly looked fairly decent. I'm not going to say it was a good midsection by any means, but it was still passable by current day standards. But yeah, I think that for the most part, the entire field improved and tightened up for the finals, the one notable exception being Heath. I think what probably happened is that he knew he was a little flat in prejudging and kind of overcompensated by carving up too much, and as a result he reverted back to 2014 or 2017 levels of distension. So it was an unfortunate turn of events because usually he makes the necessary adjustments and comes in looking even better for the finals, but not this year. Okay, enough preamble, let's jump into it though and take a look at these mandatory comparisons. In the front double, biceps. You know what? I was on the fence about this one in prejudging, but based on this shot right here, I would have to go with Rodin. He looks even more defined than before, and there's no denying his front double is positively statuesque. This is easily his strongest pose next to his ab and thigh. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that this is still a good pose for Phil, and people are not giving him enough credit here. If he was just a little more streamlined through the waist and his stomach wasn't protruding, he'd be winning it, because conditioning-wise, he's still the best overall. Look at his arms compared to Rodin's. They're showing way more definition. Rodin's bis and tris look rather smooth by comparison, not to mention he gets murdered in the forearm department. And it's the same thing through the lower body. Phil clearly is the driest through the thighs, as he's the only one showing any degree of graininess or vascularity. So while I have him losing here to Shawn, it's not by much. And I think that despite his inferior structure, he still might edge out an impressive Roelly Winklaar. Although I do have to say that Roelly's massive frame and outline just exudes raw, dominating power. He's got the sheer size to outmuscle even the likes of Phil through the arms and lats. And if he was just a tad sharper, he would have had this one hands down. In fact, if he was just a little tighter, he could have won the whole freaking contest. Now, people are saying that this is the best Roelly Winklaar we've ever seen, but I don't think so, honestly. This might very well have been his best shape at the Olympia, but I think he's been more shredded in the past, like what he brought to the Arnold Classic Australia and Prague Pros. Here we can see his legs are looking a little watery, and that holds true from the rear as well, and for that reason, I don't think he deserved to place ahead of Phil. The conditioning just wasn't quite there. Bonac is a little funny in this one. Don't get me wrong, his conditioning is good, and he has a great set of arms, and his lower body is right there with Phil's, but his proportions in this pose are kind of wonky. His arms are too short for his body, his waist is wide, and his low lats look odd. While they may be beneficial from behind, from the front they almost insert too low. He's kind of got a flying squirrel effect going on where it almost looks like flaps of skin draping down from his armpits. Personally, I don't like it and would have him in last here. It's not that he's bad in it, it's just that everyone else is better. Alright, on to the front lat spread. Easily Phil's worst pose, and it has been for years. I would put him in last here, especially with the midsection looking like it is. His abs are completely faded now, he's bloated, and even the belly button looks to be making a re-emergence, which is so sad to see considering he underwent that invasive surgery less than a year ago to address this very problem. I really hope he hasn't herniated it again. But in any case, we all know he's not well suited for this one, as his narrowness through the shoulders really hinders his V-taper. His legs are arguably still the best, and his pecs and arms look good, but it's not enough to overcome his structural deficiencies. William Bonac suffers from a similar dilemma, although I prefer him over Phil slightly because his midsection, while even wider perhaps, at least shows some definition, and downstairs I like his quad sweep when he takes this type of stance. I'm surprised to say this, but Rodin appears to be the clear-cut winner, as I've never felt that he had a great front lat spread himself, but here the polish from head to toe cannot be denied, and his V-taper is easily the best with that slim waistline and the wide-set shoulders. Roelly Winklaar is slightly off center, but I would have him in second next to Rodin because he's also very broad through the upper body and possesses a better taper than Phil or Bonac. Moving on, Phil can finally breathe a sigh of relief as he takes the side chest. I know lots of people have Rodin winning it, and I agree if we're talking about the lower body, as he is the most chiseled through the legs and his glute ham tie-in is simply sensational. But upstairs, Phil is bigger and rounder with even better separation, so I feel he's the most complete from top to bottom. Now, I absolutely love Roelly Winklaar's side chest. I've always had a soft spot for this one, even going back to 2016 when everyone called me crazy because I said he was beating Phil in it. But anyway, he has the best silhouette here out of anybody, but once again, he's just not quite sharp enough. His pecs could also stand to be a little thicker and rounder, but of course that's mainly a genetic thing, as he's always been more shoulder and arm dominant. In fact, I remember years ago when he was still training with Grandma that he stopped working out delts altogether for a time in order to bring up his chest. But anyway, I still think he looks fantastic in it. As does Bonac as well. The light is hitting him at the perfect angle, and you can see his muscles just popping out at you. Now, I've said this before, but I really feel that the side chest is a pose where almost all the big-name bodybuilders today tend to look good because it showcases their size and thickness while kind of masking their abdomens, so they're all looking amazing here. But if I had to order it, I would go with Phil 1, Rodin a close number 2, Roelly probably 3rd, and Bonac 4th. But in any case, it's extremely close. In the back double bicep, this is Phil's money shot right here, and he wins it handily. His back is the thickest with the most detail and full development, and his arms from the rear are likewise the best. The separation between his triceps, brachialis, and biceps is unmatched here. Downstairs, it's very close between him and Shawn, and William for that matter, but upstairs, it's a clear victory for the gift. Bonac is actually the one pushing Phil the most here, as he's the only other guy who can rival his complete back development. Rodin and Roelly both have weak lower backs. Roelly's looks especially shallow here, and Roelly doesn't have the lower body definition to hang with the rest of them, so he comes in last. Rodin has the cleanest lines like usual, but I'd have him in 3rd, and he only beats out Roelly by virtue of his conditioning because otherwise he's getting severely outmuscled. The rear lat spread is another knockout blow by Phil Heath. This is arguably even more of a runaway for him than the back double bi, as his depth and detail throughout the back is once again unparalleled. Conversely, this is Rodin's worst pose by far. I really don't know what's going on, but his taper here looks surprisingly terrible. You can say it's just a bad picture, but be my guest. Go browse through the galleries. He just didn't seem to be able to hit it properly this year whatsoever. So I think you can chalk that up to poor posing technique because we all saw from the front that he has the best V-taper in this lineup. So this is a strange situation indeed. But anyway, after Phil, it's a toss-up between Roelly Winklaar and William Bonac. On the one hand, I prefer Roelly's back as it's wider and even more detailed than Bonac's. But then again, William beats him through the glutes and hams, so I don't know, take your pick, guys. But one thing's for certain, Phil's in first and Shawn's in last. The side triceps is another close call, but I have to give it to Phil. His triceps are just light years ahead of Rodin's, so even though Shawn has those picture-perfect washboard abs, other than that, I feel Phil takes virtually every other body part. Even his lower body is being presented better, and as you can see, when he keeps his midsection in check, it's really not all that bad. Now, I would like to give this one to Bonac because his execution is just flawless, tilting back like that to show off the back calf and really emphasizing the entire arm, not just the triceps, but the biceps as well. I think this is Bonac's best shot along with his most muscular, but unfortunately the angle here is doing him a bit of a disservice, so he doesn't look quite as good as he normally does. Still, he's a lock for second at least, as Roelly can't seem to figure out how to hit this one, so just to save his life. It's a shame because his horseshoe is just out of this world. It's unbelievably thick and even feathered, but aside from that, the rest of his body just doesn't showcase that well. Admittedly, though, the angle is off for him, but still, shockingly enough, I'd have to put him in 4th because his poor presentation is letting him down. Okay, and this picture right here really tells the tale of the show. This is honestly, in my opinion, the major reason Phil Heath failed to repeat. It's the gut. It came back to haunt him here in the finals. When they called for the ab and thigh, Rodin just turned and stared him down for like a solid 5 seconds. Now, I don't blame a challenger for trying to exploit the champion's weakness and draw attention to it, but it was actually getting a little excessive and unsportsmanlike even. Head judge Steve Weinberger had to shout at them to hit the pose already, and he didn't sound too happy about Shawn's conduct up there. But still, make no mistake about it, Phil's midsection was a disaster when he let it go, and there's no excuse for that. So this pose is for Shawn Rhoden, what the back double bicep is for Phil Heath. It's his best shot by far. It might even be more of a blowout because where Phil had some competition in the form of William Bonac in the back double, Rodin is just destroying the entire field here. I mean, it's not even remotely close. This might very well be the best ab and thigh since the likes of Flex Wheeler and Shawn Ray back in the day. He even has the feathering in the quads, which is another attribute that Phil lacks, so it's a done deal. I will say, however, that Phil doesn't look terrible in it. Certainly not as dire as everyone is making it out to be. Like I mentioned before, his midsection doesn't look all that bad once he's actually locked into the pose. Bonac actually fares worse, as his waist is even blockier and he can't even seem to hit a conventional ab and thigh at all. So I would rank this one Rodin, Roelly, Phil, then Bonac. And finally, we come to the most muscular. There's a couple variations to go through, but first we have William and Shawn in the hands clasped. And I gotta point it out because William is absolutely schooling the new Mr. Olympia here. His arms look twice as big and round, his pecs are more striated, and his legs are just as shapely and conditioned, but with greater size. So yeah, only thing Rodin's got on him is once again the midsection. But his triceps are so lackluster, they have zero sweep whatsoever, and he's looking very underwhelming here. If I were his coach, I would have advised him to just avoid this one altogether. Phil looks great in the crab, aside from the waistline once again, which really does hurt the overall impact of the pose because it distracts from his otherwise world-class arms and delts. But the pecs also look stupidly thick and striated, and his legs are probably the best in the frame, so you can't say he's not at least in the running here. Roelly is not even a factor right now as he's still transitioning, but based on this pick, I would order it Bonac, then Phil, then Rodin. And this is the last picture I have to show you, with Rodin now wisely finishing with the hands on hip. He looks much better in this version because it places more emphasis on his structure and tapered waistline and less attention on his mediocre arms. So now, between him and Phil, I can definitely see a case for Rodin winning on the basis of structure and aesthetics alone. However, Phil smashes him in terms of density and raw muscularity, and going body part for body part, he's still more complete. I'm surprised to say this, but Bonac actually looks the best here and wins the most muscular. It's amazing because Phil, Heath, and Roelly Winklaar have two of the best most musculars in history, yet Bonac's outdoing them this time. His muscle bellies are in the same league as Phil's, and his mass is also on a similar level, yet his midsection doesn't seem to be protruding and spoiling the pose for him. Now, a big part of this is down to lighting, I think. As we can see, it's just kind of beaming off of Bonac, giving him that perfect polish, whereas Roelly over there looks flat and dull by comparison. You don't see that nice reflective shine, and his muscle bellies aren't popping as much. So this might not be a fair shake for him because we all know he's got one of the most crazy and devastating crab most musculars ever. But based on this look, I'm not even sure I'd have him ahead of Phil. Okay, so that's all for this one, guys. And just to summarize, as far as the top two are concerned, Rodin won the front double, front lat spread, ab and thigh, and arguably the most muscular. Whereas Phil took the side chest, side tricep, back double bicep, and rear lat spread. You could also make a strong argument for him beating Rodin in the most muscular as well, and I probably would give him the nod here, especially when you consider that Phil would smoke him in the hands clasped, which we didn't even get to see this time. So really, if we're determining the winner by going pose for pose, I think Phil probably should have still won this one. It's only by virtue of his midsection and poor stage presence in terms of keeping it together during the transitions that he lost, as that was the only real chink in his armor that Shawn Rhoden could exploit. Others have claimed that Rodin was better conditioned, but I disagree. While it's true that he displayed more detail in certain areas, like the side leg, glutes, and obviously the abdominals, Phil's muscles had a harder and drier look to it, and he was clearly more defined through the arms and back. So that's my view on all this. One of the greatest and most unpredictable Olympias in recent memory. And not to take away from Rodin because he did look incredible, but Phil essentially sealed his own fate by failing to correct his biggest flaw. Some people have commented that this was like 2008, where Jay came in off for the second straight year, and the judges were forced to award the smaller but more conditioned Dexter Jackson. I partly agree in that Phil was off 2 times in a row, but I don't think that it was a matter of conditioning. In my opinion, it's purely the gut and all the backlash from the fans these last couple of years that forced the IFBB to shift their judging criteria and ultimately cost Phil Heath the title. Okay guys, so thank you all for watching. I know this was a bit of a long one, but I want it to be as thorough as possible and really take my time and not rush it like I did with the prejudging, well, because, I did get a little carried away there and we all saw what happened. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed and feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more. Until next time, I'm the Tominator signing off and I'll be back.